Taro's reward. A young woodcutter named Taro lived with his mother and father on a lonely hillside. All day long he chopped wood in the forest. Though he worked very hard, he earned very little money. This made him sad, for he was a thoughtful son and wanted to give his old parents everything they needed. One evening, when Taro and his parents were sitting in a corner of their hut, a strong wind began to blow. It whistled through the cracks of the hut, and everyone felt very cold. Suddenly, Taro's father said, "I wish I had a cup of sake. It would warm me and do my old heart good." This made Taro sadder than ever, for the heartwarming drink called as sake was very expensive. How do I earn more money? He asked himself. How do I get a little sake for my poor old father? He decided to work harder than before. Next morning, Taro jumped off bed earlier than usual and made his way to the forest. He chopped and cut as the sun climbed, and soon he was so warm that he had to take off his jacket. His mouth was dry and his face was wet with sweat. My poor old father, he thought. If only he was as warm as I. And with that, he began to chop even faster, thinking of extra money he must earn to buy the sake to warm the old man's bones. Then suddenly, Taro stopped chopping. What was that sound? He heard. Could it be? Could it possibly be rushing water? Taro could not remember even seeing or hearing a rushing stream in that part of the forest. He was thirsty. The axe dropped out of his hands and he ran in the direction of that sound. Taro saw a beautiful little waterfall hidden behind a rock. Kneeling at a place where the water flowed quietly, he cupped a little in his hands and put it to his lips. Was it water? Or was it sake? He tasted it again and again, and always it was the delicious sake instead of cold water. Taro quickly filled the pitcher he had with him and hurried home. The old man was delighted with the sake. After one swallow of the liquid, he stopped, shivering, and did a little dance in the middle of the floor. That afternoon, a neighbor stopped by for a visit. Taro's father politely offered her a cup of the sake. The lady drank it greedily and thanked the old man. Then Taro told her the story of the magic waterfall. Thanking them for the delicious drink, she left in a hurry. By nightfall, she had spread the story throughout the whole village. That evening, there was a long procession of visitors to the woodcutter's house. Each man heard the story of the waterfall and took a sip of the sake. In less than an hour, the pitcher was empty. Next morning, Taro started for work even earlier than the morning before. He carried with him the largest pitcher he owned, for he intended first of all to go to the waterfall. When he reached it, he found to his great surprise all his neighbors there. They were carrying pitchers, jars, buckets, anything they could find to hold the magic sake. Then one villager knelt and held his mouth under the waterfall to drink. He drank again and again, and then shouted angrily, "Water, nothing but water." Others also tried, but there was no sake, only cold water. "We have been tricked," shouted the villagers. "Where is Taro? Let us drown him in this waterfall." But Taro had been wise enough to slip behind a rock. When he saw how things were going, he was nowhere to be found. Muttering their anger and disappointment, the villagers left the place one by one. Taro came out from his hiding place. Was it true? He wondered. Was the sake a dream? Once more, he caught a little liquid in his hand and put it to his lips. It was the same fine sake. To the thoughtful son, the magic waterfall gave the delicious sake. To everyone else, it gave only cold water. The story of Taro and his magic waterfall reached the Emperor of Japan. He sent for the young woodcutter and rewarded him with 20 pieces of gold for having been so good and kind. Then he named the most beautiful fountain in the city after Taro. This, said the emperor, was to encourage all children to honor and obey their parents. A Japanese story retold. Now, let's summarize this lesson. There was a young woodcutter named Taro. He lived with his old parents on a lonely hillside. He earned only a small amount of money from his work. This made him sad because he wanted to make life better for his parents. One day it was very cold. Taro's father said, I wish I had a cup of sake. This made Taro sadder than ever, for the sake was very expensive. However, next morning he got up earlier than usual and made for the forest. He kept on chopping the wood for a long time. His mouth was dry and he felt thirsty. But he went on chopping the wood. Suddenly, a sound of water falling somewhere nearly made Taro stop his work. He had never seen or heard of rushing water nearby. He was very thirsty. He ran in the direction of the sound. Taro saw a small but beautiful waterfall. He drank the liquid, but to his surprise, it was not water but sake. Taro had a pitcher with him. He filled it with delicious liquid and hurried home. The old man was delighted with the liquid. He took just one swallow. Then this stopped his shivering and he began to dance. This was his way to show his happiness. That day, they had a visitor from the village who was offered sake. Taro told her the story of the magic waterfall. So the story spread to other villagers. All the villagers came to Taro's house, and within half an hour, the picture was empty. Next morning, all the villagers had reached the magic waterfall. However, they became angry. When they tasted the liquid, it was nothing but cold water. They were very angry and wanted to drown Taro, who they thought had cheated them. Taro hid himself behind a rock to escape. When they were gone, he tasted the liquid himself. It was the same fine sake and not cold water. It was now clear that the magic waterfall gave sake only to Taro. To all others, it gave only water. Obviously, God was kind to Taro because he was a thoughtful son. The story of Taro and his magical waterfall reached the Emperor of Japan. He sent for Taro and rewarded him with 20 pieces of gold. Then he named the most beautiful fountain of the city after Taro. This was to encourage all children to honor and obey their parents.